You need to move down to economy immediately. This seat is not meant for someone like you." That cold remark sliced through the calm of Global Air Flight 772's first-class cabin, turning a space that had only been filled with the sound of rolling suitcases and the rustle of newspapers into something heavy and suffocating. David Coleman, dressed in a crisp navy suit with his Mont Blanc briefcase tucked neatly at his feet, slowly lifted his eyes from the Financial Times. His gaze was calm as still water, but the undercurrents in the cabin had already begun to stir. The voice belonged to Lisa Harper, the 36-year-old chief flight attendant, slender, her hair in a tight bun, her tone sharp as a blade. The name tag on her chest gleamed under the warm cabin lights. David offered a polite smile. "Excuse me, there must be some mistake. This is seat 2A, fully paid for." But Lisa did not back down. She crossed her arms, her eyes laced with prejudice. "That ticket doesn't look real. You shouldn't make this difficult. Security is waiting just outside the door." Whispers rippled through the cabin. A few phone screens lit up, cameras angled toward seat 2A. A young woman in 3C murmured to her companion, "This is absurd," before pressing the button to go live. David set his paper aside, calmly held his boarding pass to the scanner. A clear beep, a green light. Ticket valid. Yet instead of apologizing, Lisa frowned. "Must be a system error. This seat is reserved for regulars. People like you usually find ways to sneak into first class." Each word, "people like you," landed like lead, echoing in every ear nearby. An elderly man pulled off his headphones to watch. The middle-aged passenger in 2C froze with his fingers hovering above his laptop keys. And Emily Zhao, a businesswoman of Chinese descent, raised her phone higher, her live stream filling with furious comments. "It's 2025 and this is still happening?" David stayed composed, letting out a quiet sigh. On his phone, a reminder glowed. 9 a.m. Board meeting, Atlanta. A contract worth hundreds of millions awaited. He had no time for this charade. But he knew some battles, if avoided, would never end. Lisa lowered her voice, but not enough to keep others from hearing. "Move to the back and I'll be lenient. If not, security comes in now." To her, he was nothing more than an improper passenger. To everyone else watching, it was a test of dignity. The cabin fell silent. No one dared intervene. David lifted his head, met her eyes. A pause. Then his voice, low and firm. "I am sitting in the seat I paid for, and I will not move." The moment hung heavy, silence tightening around them. The reading light cast sharp shadows across Lisa's face, where arrogance had curdled into hostility. She tilted her head, signaling a colleague. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the jet bridge. 2 security officers entered, followed by Miguel Rodriguez, the 45-year-old flight supervisor with a weathered face and piercing eyes. He took David's ticket, examined it under the light, ran his fingers along the paper, checked every detail. Finally, a slow nod. "This ticket is fully valid." Murmurs surged. Emily Zhao leaned her camera closer. Comments flooded her screen. "Unbelievable. They're humiliating him in front of everyone." But Lisa refused to relent. Her jaw tightened, her voice cutting through the tension. "The system could be hacked. I've seen it 100 times. He doesn't belong in first class." David's eyes glinted, sharp as a blade. Outside, dawn was breaking across the wing of the aircraft. Inside, a storm had begun to rage, and no one yet knew that the man being humiliated in seat 2A, dismissed as just another faceless passenger, was in fact someone who held the power to shake Global Air to its core with a single phone call. David Coleman boarded Global Air Flight 772 at 10:47 p.m. The boarding door was closing behind him, the short beep of the scanner confirming his first-class ticket. He nodded politely to the gate agent, his eyes calm, yet quietly assured. At 44, David was no stranger to overnight flights and early morning meetings, where billions were negotiated in a matter of hours. The tailored Armani suit, the polished leather shoes, and the Mont Blanc briefcase carrying confidential documents all spoke of a man in control. Yet beneath the polished exterior, he carried the cold patience of someone who had too often been met with suspicious eyes. The first-class cabin was nearly silent that night. Only 4 passengers, an older businessman focused on his laptop, an elderly couple murmuring over glasses of wine, and a young woman reading a novel. The steady hum of the air system filled the background. David settled into seat 2A, loosened his tie, and unfolded the Financial Times to a headline that caught his eye. Aviation industry enters restructuring phase. Maintenance contracts become key to survival. A faint smile touched his lips. The article might as well have been written for the board meeting he would lead the next morning in Atlanta. As David absorbed each line, Lisa Harper, the lead flight attendant, appeared. At first, she was just a swift silhouette, wiping down tray tables and checking seat belts. But when her eyes fell on the man of color seated in 2A, her steps slowed. "Excuse me, may I see your boarding pass?" Her voice was polite, but cold. David glanced up, handed her the pass on his phone without hesitation. Lisa studied it, her gaze lingering longer than necessary. Far too long. Her lips pressed together. "This ticket, something doesn't look right. The print quality, the barcode. Where did you get this?" David's tone remained even. "From the Global Air app, as always." "Oh, so you fly first class often?" she pressed, her brow arching, the question more accusation than inquiry. David didn't rise to the bait. He simply nodded. "When the work requires it." In his mind, memories overlapped. More than 800 first-class flights in 5 years, most of them with this very airline. Times when he was greeted with diamond, terre courtesies were few, but the suspicious looks were many. Lisa stepped back, bent to whisper with a younger attendant. David caught fragments. "Not valid. Check again. System." Eyes in the cabin began to drift toward him. The woman in 3C lowered her book, her phone's camera glowing. Lisa returned with a handheld scanner. A green light flashed. Ticket valid. The cabin seemed to exhale, but only briefly. "The system must be faulty," Lisa said loudly. "I've seen cases like this. Unauthorized transfers or invalid points." David's brow furrowed, his gaze hardening. He sat upright, the Mont Blanc briefcase striking the floor with a sharp click. "I paid in cash. Do you need the receipt?" Lisa shook her head, her face rigid. "Anyone can forge a receipt. You should cooperate, move to economy, avoid unnecessary trouble." Whispers rose. The elderly man in 1D pulled off his headphones, muttering, "This is going too far." David scanned the cabin. He read discomfort in their eyes, doubt, pity, unease. But he also saw Emily Zhao holding her phone high, the screen glowing with the words, "Live, 214 viewers." His heart beat steadily. He knew that a single retreat tonight would turn into a permanent scar. Lisa lowered her voice, but her eyes were sharp as steel. "Do you truly believe you belong here?" A pause. David lifted his head, light glinting off the thin rims of his glasses. "Yes, I do." The intercom sounded, the captain calling the crew to prepare for departure. But inside the first-class cabin, a storm had already begun to gather. The green beep of the scanner should have silenced all doubts. Instead, it fanned the embers of a storm. Lisa Harper lowered the scanner, her face tightening. She glanced around the cabin, searching for agreement in the eyes of the passengers. This ticket scanned valid, but that doesn't mean it's legitimate. Someone could have hacked the system or swapped seats illegally. A ripple of murmurs spread. In seat 3C, Emily Zhao gave a small nod toward her phone, her live stream rolling as comments flooded in. Unbelievable. It's 2025 and this is still happening? Keep recording. David Coleman sat still, his hands resting lightly on the leather briefcase. But in his eyes, serenity gave way to something sharper. Cold patience. He had seen this play before, prejudice dressed in uniform, hiding behind polite smiles. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and deliberate, "I paid for seat 2A. If you require, I can show you the receipt." Lisa's laugh was sharp, devoid of warmth. "Anyone can forge paperwork. I've seen hundreds like you, trying to sneak into places they don't belong." First class fell into silence. Every eye turned toward row 2. An elderly man in 1D leaned forward, muttering, "Nonsense, I've flown 40 years and never seen this." Lisa turned, raising her voice so all could hear. "We apologize for the inconvenience. This will be resolved immediately. Security will arrive in minutes." The words rang like a sentence passed. Emily Zhao lifted her phone higher, the frame capturing David's calm face, Lisa's arrogance, and the uneasy curiosity of the passengers. Viewers climbed. 800, 1200, 1600. David opened his briefcase, pulled out his phone, and dialed swiftly. "Patricia, I'll be 15 minutes late. Don't cancel the 9 a.m. board meeting. And send me the Delta maintenance contract. Clause 12.7. Thank you." He closed the phone, his tone light, almost casual. But Lisa had heard. Her eyes narrowed, her words cutting. "Pretending to be busy won't validate you. Making calls here won't make you belong here." A few passengers chuckled weakly, emboldened by her scorn. But David didn't respond. He simply closed the briefcase, straightened his posture, and fixed his gaze out the window, where the taxi lights flickered across the runway. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps from the jet bridge. 2 security officers entered, followed by Miguel Rodriguez, the flight supervisor. Broad-shouldered, stern-faced, he took David's ticket, held it under the light, fingers brushing the paper with the practiced touch of experience. "Printed on official Delta stock, barcode and magnetic strip intact. This ticket is valid," Miguel confirmed, his voice weighted with certainty. A wave of murmurs washed through the cabin. Emily steadied her camera, the live stream exploding with comments. "See, it's real. This is blatant harassment." But Lisa refused to yield. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she snapped back. "The system could be hacked. He is not a first-class passenger, I guarantee it." The words sliced the air, thick with tension. Miguel frowned. The elderly man in 1D shot to his feet, pointing at Lisa. "Enough. The man's ticket is valid. What more do you want?" Lisa whipped around. "Are you accusing me of lying?" The old man's reply was clipped, each word nailed in place. "I'm saying you are making a grave mistake." Emily pinned a hashtag onto her stream. #Global Air Discrimination. The tag ignited, trending across Twitter and TikTok in real time. David sat still, watching the argument unfold, the familiar sting of suspicion and humiliation coursing through him. But this time, he knew the ending would be different. Because he wasn't just another passenger. He was the man who could bring Global Air to its knees with a single signature. The cockpit door swung open, the metallic hinge sounding soft, yet echoing like a gavel through the thick air of first class. Captain Howard Peterson, 58 years old, salt, and pepper hair neatly combed, eyes sharp with the weight of 30 years in the skies, strode out. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone was enough to silence the cabin. "What is holding up my flight?" Peterson asked, his voice deep and resonant, every word carrying the force of command. Miguel Rodriguez stepped forward quickly, handing him the ticket and ID of the passenger in seat 2A. "Ticket scans valid, passport matches, no signs of forgery." Peterson held the passport, his eyes flicking from the photo to the man seated before him. A pause, then a small nod. "Match. No problem here." A low ripple of murmurs spread through first class. Emily Zhao gripped her phone tighter, her live stream now climbing past 3,000 viewers. Comments flashed. "Clearly legit." More, "Why is this still being debated? This is discrimination in plain sight." But Lisa Harper refused to back down. Her cheeks flushed red, her voice sharp, her hand trembling slightly though her eyes still burned with defiance. "Captain, I know fraud when I see it. This man does not belong here. The way he carries himself, the way he looks, he doesn't fit first class." The words dropped like stones into silence. Eyes turned toward her, some horn-eyed with disbelief, others hard with anger. The elderly gentleman in 1D slapped the armrest. "What did you just say?" Peterson turned slowly, his voice like the edge of a blade. "On what grounds, Lisa? Intuition? Prejudice?" Lisa swallowed hard, her lips trembling but forced out. "Just the way he sits, the way he acts. It doesn't look right." A dangerous hush blanketed the cabin. Miguel frowned deeply. The two security officers shifted awkwardly. Emily Zhao swung her camera closer to Lisa, and her live stream erupted with comments. "Blatant discrimination! Fire her now!" Peterson inhaled sharply, placed the passport back in David's hand, and bowed his head slightly. "Mr. Coleman, my apologies for the delay. Your ticket and ID are fully valid. You have every right to sit in seat 2A. David gave a small nod, his voice steady. "Thank you, Captain." But Lisa still would not yield. She nearly shouted, her words cracking. "I want to inspect his carry-on. If he has nothing to hide, he has nothing to fear." The murmurs swelled into outrage. A woman in 3C burst out, "You're abusing your power." Peterson snapped his head around, his eyes blazing. "That's enough. You've crossed the line, Lisa. On this aircraft, no one is searched without cause. Not today, not on my flight." Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but Peterson cut her off, each word hammered down. "Return to your station, now." First class erupted into the atmosphere of a live courtroom. Emily Zhao announced her viewer count had crossed 5,000. The feed flooded with the hashtag #Global Air Discrimination. David remained seated, calm, his gaze steady. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved in anger. It was his composure that stripped Lisa bare. As she retreated toward the galley, her face burning, Peterson signaled to the security officers, "You may leave. We don't need any more theater here." They hesitated briefly, then turned and exited. The cabin door shut behind them. For a moment, the silence was taut, and then the intercom crackled to life. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff. We are number 4 for departure." The plane vibrated softly as it began to taxi. But inside first class, every eye was still locked on David Coleman, the man who had just been humiliated in front of all, yet now sat unmoved, like a mountain that could not be shaken. No one knew that only hours later he would become the storm sweeping through the entire airline. The cabin lights shifted to a soft amber glow as the plane began to tremble gently. The landing gear rolled slowly along the runway, the engines rising from a low growl to a steady roar. But inside first class, no one was focused on the flight anymore. Every gaze, every phone camera was fixed on seat 2A, where David Coleman sat, composed as though nothing had just happened. Emily Zhao glanced at her phone. More than 7,100 people were watching live. Comments flooded the screen. "He's so calm." "The captain handled it right, but that flight attendant needs to be fired immediately." Global air discrimination is trending in 3 major cities. Lisa Harper sat in the galley, her hands trembling as she secretly typed on her phone. The usual mask of confidence and superiority had cracked. To her, every glance felt like a blade pointed her way. David remained silent. He placed his Mont Blanc briefcase on his lap, opened it slightly, and pulled out his tablet. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. "Patricia, the flight is delayed 15 minutes. Move the meeting to 9:30. Prepare the Global Air Maintenance Contract data, especially Clause 12.7 on discrimination. I need it within 1 hour." The message sent. He closed the device and leaned back, his eyes drifting calmly out the window, where the runway lights streaked past. Around him, many passengers watched with a mix of respect and curiosity. Who was this man, to hold such cold composure under fire? A whispered voice came from behind. "He doesn't look like someone sneaking into first class at all." The man in seat 2C nodded slowly. "On the contrary, he looks like someone inspecting us." The aircraft shuddered, then surged forward. The engines howled, pressing everybody back into the seats. Then came the sudden lift. Global Air 772 left the ground, slicing through the night, carrying the weight of the drama into the dark clouds above. While most passengers tightened their seatbelts, David closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply. But his mind did not rest. Every word Lisa had spoken, every glance from the passengers, every rising number on that live stream, he was threading them together like pieces of a puzzle. From the galley, Lisa risked a glance at David. Their eyes met for only a moment. But in that instant, she felt no anger, no hatred from him, only the calm, piercing look of someone in control. And that alone made her shiver. In row 3, Emily whispered to her companion, "Do you see? He's not yelling, not arguing. It's this silence that makes it more intense." The livestream counter surged to 8,900 viewers. Someone had shared it on TikTok, and the numbers multiplied by the minute. The hashtag #GlobalAirDiscrimination climbed to the top of the national trending list. David opened his case again, this time drawing out a sleek silver embossed business card. He stared at it for a few seconds, then slipped it into his inner pocket. A small gesture, but one that signaled to himself the moment to reveal was drawing near. The plane leveled off at 30,000 feet. The seatbelt sign clicked off. Tray tables unfolded. The clatter of food carts echoed faintly. Yet all those sounds blurred into background noise, because the true center of gravity still sat in 2A. David leaned back, closed his eyes, his lips pressed slightly together in thought. He already knew Lisa Harper's words, "People like you," would carry a price that Global Air could not afford to ignore. The only question left was how much they would pay. In the 37 minutes to Atlanta, David had chosen his course, silent as a mountain, then striking like thunder. And the moment he pressed the call button for the attendant, the real storm would begin. A soft ding echoed through the first-class cabin. A sound so ordinary, yet now it struck like the drumbeat announcing the turning point of a play. David Coleman had not pressed the call button for long, nor had he repeated it. Just once, decisive. His quiet patience made even that small chime feel ominous. Seconds later, Lisa Harper appeared. Her smile was forced, her eyes trying and failing to hide panic. "What can I do for you, sir?" David lifted his head, his gaze calm but deep. "Please, ask Captain Peterson to come speak with me for a moment." Lisa froze, her smile strained. "The captain is busy flying the plane, sir. I can help you." David gave a small nod, then shook his head. "No, thank you. I need to speak to the captain himself. When he has a moment, deliver my request." The cabin went still. Passengers quietly watched, a few phones secretly lifted higher to record. Emily Zhao pressed her lens closer, the live stream counter hitting 11,400 viewers. Lisa stood in place for a beat, then turned sharply, heels tapping down the carpet like drum beats pounding in her chest. The cockpit door cracked open, muffled voices spilling out. Peterson's low, steady baritone, Lisa's high, urgent protests. Then, after long, heavy minutes, Captain Peterson appeared. He walked slowly, each step steady, as if the airplane floor had become a courtroom, and he the presiding judge. "Mr. Coleman," Peterson stopped at seat 2A, his voice calm, every word crisp with authority. "You asked to see me?" David folded his tablet shut and looked up, his eyes catching the cabin light. "Thank you for coming, Captain. I want to apologize for the earlier disruption. You handled it with professionalism." Peterson gave a brief nod. "No need to apologize. I was only doing my duty." David reached into his inner jacket pocket and drew out a card. A silver, embossed business card, letters raised with sharp precision. He held it out with both hands, his voice low, but resonant enough to fill the cabin. "I think you should know exactly who I am." Peterson took the card. His eyes skimmed the words, and in an instant, his expression shifted from composed to shaken. Skybridge Aviation Holdings, David Coleman, Chief Executive Officer. The air froze solid. Time itself seemed to slow, each second heavy as stone. Peterson lifted his gaze, disbelief flickering across his face. You are the CEO of Skybridge?" David nodded. "That's right." A shockwave rippled through the cabin. Emily's voice nearly broke in the live stream. "Oh my God, he's the CEO!" Viewers surged past 12,600. Comments erupted. "Plot twist! Lisa is finished. Unshakable, absolute class." Lisa Harper emerged slowly from the galley, her face ashen. She stammered, Skybridge?" Peterson turned to her, his tone sharp and heavy. "Skybridge Aviation Holdings is Global Air's largest maintenance partner. They service the engines, fuselage, and electronics for our entire fleet. 12,000 employees, 7 airports, a contract worth nearly $850 million a year." Each number cracked like thunder in a clear sky. The cabin was stunned into silence. Passengers stared wide-eyed, some slack-jawed, others gripping their armrests. David leaned back, his voice low and steady. "Every global air plane your passengers trust their lives to passes through the hands of my engineers." Lisa stumbled back, her eyes wide and glassy. Her face drained of color, her lips quivering without words. David's mouth curved faintly, not in arrogance, but in the quiet knowing of a man who had seen this play out too many times, and who understood that this very moment would rewrite the fate of an airline. The first-class cabin was silent as a tomb. Only the steady growl of the engines outside remained, and the pounding of hearts inside. David Coleman had shed the mask of an anonymous passenger. Now everyone knew. The man they had tried to humiliate was the one who held the power to shake Global Air to its core. The first-class cabin was silent. The roar of the engines outside had become a harsh soundtrack to a moment where no one dared to breathe. David Coleman folded his hands, sat upright, and spoke in a voice low but sharp as a blade. "Captain, I need you to read a clause in the contract between Global Air and Skybridge." He opened his tablet, a few swift taps lighting up the screen, and handed it to Peterson. The words shone clearly, cold as a verdict. Clause 12.7. Skybridge Aviation Holdings reserves the right to unilaterally terminate or amend the contract if the partner, its employees, or representatives engage in discriminatory behavior that violates the principles of equality, dignity, and respect for humanity. Peterson read each word aloud, his voice tightening as he went. When he looked up, beads of sweat dotted his brow. David nodded slightly. "Correct. That clause has never been invoked until tonight." Emily Zhao clutched her phone, the live stream soaring to 15,000 viewers. Comments exploded. "Oh my God, this is the real plot twist. The CEO just handed Global Air a death sentence. Lisa's career is over." Lisa Harper trembled. She swallowed hard, her lips stammering broken words. You can't, not over one small misunderstanding." David cut her off, his voice striking through the air like thunder. "Misunderstanding? You humiliated me in public, accused me of stealing a seat in front of passengers and tens of thousands watching online. That is no misunderstanding. That is systemic prejudice." Lisa froze in place. David turned to Peterson, his eyes flashing like lightning before a storm. "I have 3 choices for Global Air, and I want you to be the first witness." He raised 3 fingers. Option 1. Terminate the Skybridge contract immediately. That means 127 of your aircraft lose their maintenance coverage. 2,840. 7 Global Air employees at your technical centers lose their jobs. Your entire schedule collapses within a week. A shockwave rippled across the cabin. Passengers gasped, staring at one another. The live stream comments exploded. "Game over if this happens." "Global Air will collapse for real." David lowered one finger. Option 2. Keep the contract, but Global Air must immediately dismiss every employee involved in tonight's incident. At the same time, launch mandatory anti-bias training across your entire customer service workforce. His gaze landed on Lisa. She shook violently, fighting to remain standing, her hands clenched so tightly they drew blood. David lowered another finger. Option 3. Skybridge withdraws from Global Air and transfers the entire maintenance contract to your competitors, American, United, Southwest. They have reached out many times, and I assure you, they would welcome it with open arms. The cabin seemed to erupt. A man in seat 2C blurted out, "God, he really can do that." Peterson stood speechless, his face drained, eyes locked on the tablet still glowing with the damning claws. David lowered his hands, interlacing his fingers, his voice dropping but weighted like iron. "I do not want destruction, but I will not tolerate prejudice. The choice belongs to Global Air." Emily Zhao pushed her camera closer, the live stream now over 18,000 viewers. Comments poured in. "Never seen a CEO wield power like this. This is justice at 30,000 feet. Lisa is about to lose her job mid-flight." Lisa broke into tears, her voice cracking apart. I have a family. Please, I just misspoke." David met her gaze, his eyes steady and unflinching. "Did you think about my family when you humiliated me in front of everyone? Did you think about my dignity, or that of anyone who looks like me, when you said people like you?" The cabin sank into a deadly silence. Outside the window, the night sky stretched endless, mirroring the void of expectation now hanging over a giant airline. David leaned back slightly, his voice calm, deliberate, yet echoing through every soul present. Global Air has one night to decide: change or pay the price. The second hand on the clock ticked forward with heavy weight. The first. Class cabin of Global Air 772 was steeped in suffocating silence. No one cared about the meal service or the glowing entertainment screens anymore. Every eye was fixed on the man in seat 2A, the one who had placed the fate of an entire airline on the scales with just a few words. Outside the window, the night sky began to pale. The lights of Atlanta flickered in the distance, stretching out like a river of fire. The aircraft started its descent. The captain's voice came over the intercom, steady but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing to land at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts." But everyone understood. This was no longer just another flight. This was the crack that would split open the heart of global air. Emily Zhao tilted her phone slightly. The viewer count hit 21,000, comments streaming in relentlessly. This isn't just an incident, it's a social verdict. And global air discrimination is #1 nationwide. Tomorrow the stock will tank. Lisa Harper sat frozen in the galley. Her face was ashen, her makeup smeared by sweat and tears. Every time the plane shook, she gripped the seat as if it were the only lifeline keeping her afloat in a storm. David Coleman remained composed. He placed his tablet on the tray table, reopening the contract document. The glow of the screen lit his eyes, cool and steady. To him, this was no longer about personal insult. This was a chance to expose an entire system. The screech of the landing gear against the runway cut through the cabin like a blade. A jolt, then the plane slowed, tires screaming against the damp tarmac. Passengers exhaled, but none moved. They knew the story wasn't finished. 6:52 a.m. The aircraft rolled to a stop at Gate 17. When the cabin door opened, the chill of morning air rushed in. David Coleman rose first. He pulled his suitcase behind him, Mont Blanc case in hand. No hurry, no tension. Each step measured as though he were walking into a boardroom already waiting. The jet bridge stretched ahead like a stage curtain opening to the next act. Emily ended her live stream, but the video had already spread across platforms. CNN, Fox Business, Bloomberg, all picked it up. The hashtag @GlobalAirDiscrimination leapt from #1 nationwide to the top 5 worldwide in just 30 minutes. Behind him, Lisa stepped out. The passengers avoided her gaze. No one greeted her. No one pitied her. They moved aside, as if her presence carried a stain. In the terminal, Captain Peterson hurried after David. "Mr. Coleman, I've reported the incident to operations. Global Air's leadership is holding an emergency meeting at 8 a.m. They want to see you." David gave a slight nod, a faint smile on his lips, one that could be read as satisfaction or warning. Just as expected. When money is on the line, they learn to act very quickly. 7:15 a.m. On the top floor of Global Air's headquarters in Atlanta, the boardroom lights blazed. Richard Hartman, COO 61, tall and lean, with neatly combed silver hair, slammed his hand on the table. "We are drowning in crisis. The stock has dropped 3% in just 2 hours. The media is swarming. We must act immediately." Beside him, the head of legal trembled as he turned the contract pages, his voice hoarse. Clause 12.7 gives Skybridge full rights to terminate the contract immediately with no compensation. If they do, the entire fleet loses maintenance support within a week. The room thickened with dread. Every eye turned toward you, the large screen replaying the video of the incident. Lisa's words, her scornful look, David's measured response, every moment laid bare irrefutable evidence. Richard gripped his case handle tightly, his voice sharp as steel. "Prepare the boardroom. He arrives at 8. And remember this. Today, Global Air is not facing a passenger. We are facing the man who can strangle this company with a single nod." Outside, the dawn was breaking. But inside Global Air's headquarters, a storm unlike any before was gathering strength. 8 a.m. The boardroom on the 25th floor of Global Air's headquarters glowed under harsh fluorescent lights. Glass walls looked out over the Atlanta skyline, but no one had the mind to admire the sunrise. Every member of the leadership team was present. Richard Hartman, COO, his face taut as a wire. Beside him, the heads of legal, human resources, and communications. Each held a stack of files, yet none had the courage to open them. The door opened. David Coleman stepped inside. His navy suit remained crisp even after the overnight flight, his Mont Blanc case carried neatly in hand. He did not rush, nor did he glance around. He walked straight to the empty chair at the head of the table. Each step echoed in the silence, quickening the hearts of those seated. "Mr. Coleman," Richard began, struggling to keep his composure. "First, allow me to apologize on behalf of Global Air for what occurred. That behavior does not reflect our values." David set his case on the table, opened it, and pulled out a tablet and a folder of documents. He lifted his gaze, his voice deep and sharp as steel. "An apology is words. I am here to hear action." The atmosphere in the room dropped even lower. The communications director cleared his throat. "We have suspended flight attendant Lisa Harper, as well as supervisor Miguel Rodriguez. A press release is being drafted." David tilted his head slightly, his eyes cold. "That's it? A few names thrown away like sacrificial offerings? Do you think I created this storm just to receive a press statement in return?" The question hit like a hammer. Richard swallowed hard, glancing at legal. The man fumbled with papers, but David raised his hand to stop him. "No documents needed. I will make this clear." He lifted 3 fingers, the light glinting off the glass tabletop. "First, I require Global Air to issue a written anti-discrimination policy applying to all staff, from flight attendants to executives. This policy must be public, not internal." The second finger lowered. "Second, all customer-facing staff must undergo mandatory implicit bias training annually, not for show. I want data, testing, and reporting." His eyes locked onto the head of HR, who dropped her gaze. The third finger lowered. "Third, Global Air must establish an anonymous reporting system for both passengers and employees. Every incident of discrimination must be investigated within 24 hours, and every leader in this room will have your year-end bonuses tied directly to diversity and equity metrics." A deadly silence followed. Then the communications director blurted out, "But these measures will be extremely costly. Training, new systems, tying KPIs to compensation." David cut him off, his tone hard as iron. "More expensive or cheaper than losing an $87 million annual contract with Skybridge." No one dared to respond. Richard Hartman gripped his pen so tightly his knuckles whitened, his face drained of color. David leaned back, his voice slower now, but every word slicing like a blade. I am not here to destroy, but I am not here to look away either. Today, Global Air must choose, change, or be erased. The head of legal whispered hoarsely, if you invoke Clause 12.7, we will collapse within a week. David tilted his head, a flash of ice in his eyes. Then you already have all the motivation you need to change. The boardroom drowned in silence. Outside, the Atlanta sun rose higher, spilling across the glass walls. But inside, that light only made clearer the pale faces of those seated, leaders staring down a crossroads that could decide their fate. 3 months had passed since that fateful flight. Atlanta had entered the heat of summer, but inside the glass offices of Global Air, what burned was not the sun, but the pressure of unprecedented change. David Coleman sat in his office on the top floor of Skybridge headquarters. The glass walls opened onto the skyline, yet his focus was only on the report in front of him. Bold letters on the cover read, Diversity and Equity Report, Q1R, Global Air. He turned the pages. The numbers spoke coldly but clearly. Complaints of discrimination had fallen by 73% compared to the previous quarter. Employee satisfaction scores had risen 18%. Positive feedback from passengers of color had increased by nearly 40%. David closed the report and set it on the desk. His long breath was not of fatigue, but of confirmation. The demands he had set were never empty threats. They had forced a corporation to change, and to change for real. The door opened. Patricia Martinez, his longtime assistant, entered with a tablet in hand. Sir, this morning's headlines are all about the global air effect. American and Southwest have adopted similar anonymous reporting systems. United has tied diversity KPIs to executive bonuses. David gave a slight nod, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. That is what I expected. A storm strong enough always sends waves across the ocean. Patricia continued. And about Lisa Harper, she has been dismissed. Her record has been sent to the Labor Review Board. There were rumors she might sue, but with video evidence reaching 2.1 million views, I think her lawyers have advised her to withdraw. David did not answer immediately. He turned his chair toward the city, his voice low and steady. She was only one link in the chain. The real problem was the machinery that allowed bias to live on. But because of her, we forced the entire system to bow. His phone buzzed softly. A message from Captain Peterson. Mr. Coleman, flight number 1000, just completed without a single discrimination incident. Thank you for making us change. David smiled faintly, his eyes softening. Another message came seconds later from Emily Zhao. Our non-profit fund has helped 500 passengers receive compensation, using your case as precedent. Your story continues to inspire. Patricia looked at him and said quietly, the aviation industry is calling it the Coleman effect. They say you proved that economics can force morality. David chuckled gently, not with pride, but with reflection. I don't want a title. I only want anyone who boards a plane, white or black, rich or poor, to be treated with equal respect. Dignity is not negotiable. He rose, lifting his familiar Mont Blanc briefcase, ready for his next meeting. Because he knew this battle was far from over. From the runways of Atlanta, the effect was spreading through the aviation industry and into society itself. 3 months after Flight 772, global air was no longer the same, and neither was aviation. It all began with a man who sat firmly in seat 2A, refusing to give it up, refusing to be silent. Flight 772 has ended, but its aftershocks still echo across the aviation industry and far beyond. The story of David Coleman is not merely about a case of discrimination being exposed, but proof that when economic power meets moral resolve, an entire system can be forced to change. For experts in management, this is a rare lesson. Prejudice does not only create injustice, it also causes immense financial loss. When dignity is trampled, corporate reputation collapses, stock value plummets, and only true reform can bring redemption. But beyond all the numbers, this is a reminder for every individual. Dignity is not negotiable. If you believe that respect and fairness must be the foundation in every field, hit like and subscribe so you will not miss the next stories. And before you leave, write a comment with just 2 words. Keep dignity, so we can remember together that only when dignity is protected can society truly rise.